We see from the fundamental theorem of calculus for line integrals that being able to look at a vector field and know that it's a gradient is a really, really important thing. Searching for the original function is going to take some antiderivatives, but there's actually a short test that we can do that takes more derivatives that shows whether a vector field is the gradient or not. So let's come up with the test first, and in the next video we'll look at some examples. So first, if I have a vector field, remember that's just a formula for the arrows at every point. There's a formula next to I, and normally we call that F1. That can have x's and y's in it, but that's just a formula next to I, plus F2 of xy. That's just a formula next to j. And we want to say, is that a gradient or not? Well, remember, if it's a gradient of some function, there's some ordinary looking function over here, little f of xy. And if this is the gradient, we took the partial derivative of f with respect to x and got this. And we took the partial derivative with respect to y and got this. Now, what we're going to do is something strange. If I start with f1 over here, if I take the partial derivative here with respect to y, what I'm going to get is fxy. Now, if I take the partial derivative with respect to y here, what I'm going to get is the partial derivative of that formula that's next to I with respect to I. If I look at this part one over here, and I take the partial here with respect to x, what I'm going to get for an answer is fyx. If I actually take the derivative of the formula in front of me, what I'm going to see is the partial of f2 with respect to x. Now we know that for most of the functions we look at, fxy is equal to fx. That's certainly true of every function we have had this semester that wasn't a piecewise defined function. That means if this is a gradient function, that the partial of f1 with respect to y is going to be equal to the partial of f2 with respect to x. It's a strange thing to look at. It'll make more sense when we actually get to the next section, when we look at Green's theorem. But meanwhile, this is a test we can use for any vector field without actually looking for the gradient, the function whose gradient this is, to see if it actually is a gradient or not. In the next video, we look at 3 examples.